Hello, guys. Welcome once again to Living the Journey, the podcast. This is Dr. Andrea Medina. I am your host today again. Today, we have a special guest. Her name is Amber Rodriguez, and she is a mom of triplets. She's here for sharing her amazing story and an incredible fertility journey. And we are so excited to have her here today. As you may know, our podcast has been exploring some important topics related to fertility. Last episode, we had egg donation, and in another episode, we had IVF under 40. For our third episode, we have decided to share this amazing story. How does she do it? The fertility journey of a triplet mom. Let's welcome Amber Rodriguez.
Yes, I'm very excited. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for being here. And let's start with the questions. I have, I want to know a little bit more about yourself and your husband.
So, hello, I am Amber and my husband is Esteban. And our fertility journey began back in 2016. That's when my husband and I got married. And we knew that we wanted to add members to our family. And so after being married for a couple years in 2018, we started trying for a baby and very quickly kind of ran into some issues. So we found out we had unexplained infertility after trying for a little over a year, and we decided to pursue some treatment in the US, but it was very expensive and ultimately wasn't successful for us. And so that kind of after about 2 years into our infertility journey, that's when we started searching for other options other than what was available to us in the US.
All right, very interesting. I should mention that most of our patients, you know that every year we have around 3,000, 4,000 patients coming from abroad, coming from the US and Canada and many other parts of the world. And I must say that most of our patients come already with a diagnosis. They already know that they need a fertility treatment, and they are already very informed about what their condition is. I want to know, how did you feel when you received the diagnosis of unexplained infertility?
I felt frustrated. I never imagined that I would be the girl that would have infertility, and it didn't run in my family. It wasn't something that I had anticipated having trouble with. And so when we got some testing to figure out what was going on, I had hoped that it would give me some answers as to why I was infertile. But because there was nothing, specific that they found, we were given the diagnosis of unexplained infertility. And I felt frustrated, and I would say I felt hopeless too, because nobody could give me any answers.
I totally agree with you. When patients receive this diagnosis of unexplained infertility, rather than give you an answer, we're giving you more questions about what is happening with both of you. So I want to know, how did you and your husband support each other during this hard time?
So my husband and I supported each other a lot through our faith. We come from a Christian background, and so we prayed a lot together, and we tried to look for answers in the Bible. But, honestly, the biggest thing I would say is just emotionally, it took a real toll on our marriage. Anybody, who goes through infertility will tell you that it makes the relationship very tense and very painful, because we both wanted to add members of the family, but our efforts were frustrated. And so, so we kind of were left looking at each other as to why. And when we received the diagnosis of unexplained infertility, we felt like none of our questions were answered. We were just left with more questions. So it was very hard. And ultimately, I think it drew us closer together. But there were definitely some really tense and difficult moments for us.
I know that you had some attempts in the US. How was your first try?
So for our first try, after we had done some fertility medications, we just did some normal fertility drugs like Clomid. We were never able to be successful with that, but we did end up doing an IUI in the US. And our first IUI was unsuccessful, but our second IUI, we actually did conceive a pregnancy. And so we, at that point, were overjoyed. That was 2 years into our infertility journey, and we thought it was over. So we told everyone and celebrated in a huge way because we felt like we were free. We were free from the burden. And unfortunately, at our first ultrasound, we found that the baby had no heartbeat. So we knew that we would miscarry the baby, and we did at 10 weeks. So that was very devastating, and we needed to take a little bit of time to wait after that because that was very hard on me emotionally. But after about 6 months of waiting, after we miscarried, we decided to pursue another clinic, and then they told us, hey, you guys really are good candidates for IVF, and that's going to be the most successful thing for you. But then we started talking about dollar amounts, and they said, $26,000, and our eyes just fell. I mean, we felt like that was impossible. We had already spent close to $5,000 on medications and all of the IUI treatments. And so we felt like our journey at that point was over. We were really devastated. We thought we won't be able to ever have children. And that's when we started looking for more options outside the US.
I know that you found something related to medical tourism. How did you find LIV Fertility Center?
A friend of mine in a fertility support group had mentioned this idea of medical tourism. And she told me that a friend of hers had gone to another country to get fertility treatment, and that maybe that we could do the same because our jobs are very flexible. We're able to work remotely. So I started looking all over the world at different clinics. We considered 3 different countries, Mexico being one of them because we live in Texas, so that's very close to Mexico. And my husband is actually a Spanish speaker. And so we thought being in a country where one of us spoke the native language could be very beneficial. And so we narrowed it down to 3 different clinics all over the world. And when we reached out to LIV Fertility Center was the most approachable. They emailed us right back, set up a call with us, and didn't ask us. Some of the other clinics, like in Greece and in India, we looked at, wanted us to pay some kind of fee to have an initial phone call, but LIV Fertility didn't do that. They offered a free phone call and they answered all of our questions, and that's when we started feeling like, okay, this might be the right place for us.
Okay, and have you been in Puerto Vallarta before?
Yes, actually, back in 2016, we honeymooned in Puerto Vallarta. So it's a special city for many reasons in our hearts. But yeah, when we saw where the clinic was, we were very excited.
Yes, I know. Puerto Vallarta is one of the most visited destinations in Mexico. And it is a wonderful city. And I'm very, very happy that you have found a clinic in a special location for you. How would you define Puerto Vallarta in Mexico from your own point of view?
I think Mexico is a beautiful country. Mexico obviously will always hold a very special place in my heart because it's where my husband and I celebrated our wedding and then ultimately where we conceived our children. I think it's a beautiful country. I think, as I was saying, it holds a special place in our heart. But yeah, I think there's something really special about Mexico. People are very welcoming, very friendly, very sweet. We've really enjoyed our experience, and it holds a special place in our heart.
Is there any special recommendation that you can do for patients that are coming to Puerto Vallarta?
Well, I will say that where we stayed at Casaleta is a host family that works with patients that are getting treatment at LIV Fertility Center. And it was actually LIV Fertility Center that put us in contact with April and Bill, who are the hosts there. And they offer special discounted rates to patients staying and receiving medical treatment. And so their house was amazing. I mean, it was like a paradise. I always tell people, if you have to do IVF treatment, do it in Mexico. Like, why not? Because it is like kind of a stressful, taxing thing on your body. And so to be in such a beautiful place, in a beautiful country with the best food and all the warmth and sunshine, I think it does the body really good. I think fertility treatment is so stressful on the body. And so for me to be able to get out of my norm and somewhere else, like a beautiful city like Puerto Vallarta, it was refreshing to me, not only physically, but mentally. And so I think that helps make the treatment ultimately more successful if mentally and physically you can kind of relax and calm down, because infertility will steal so much from you, including your health, and it's very taxing. And so, yeah, I say Mexico is the best place that you could ever get. And Puerto Vallarta specifically, yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's go for the question that most of the patients that are looking for an IVF out of their country have. How much did it cost for you to have your IVF done at LIV Fertility Center?
Okay, so I'm trying to remember the difference between how much we paid for fertility treatment and then how much the cost was to live and stay and fly. So for everything, for our initial visit to do our egg retrieval, the flights there, our stay there, our food while we were there, the treatment while we were there, and then we ended up flying back and then we ended up flying again for the transfer, our frozen transfer. We stayed again, transferred, and flew back. For all of that, the entire thing, it was $12,000.
And you were mentioning before that in the States, it is something around 25K or something like this?
Yes, that's like the low cost. It's obscenely expensive. So for me, it was less than half the cost to go to LIV Fertility. And that also doesn't include, LIV Fertility offers a lot of other bonus things that not many clinics in the States offer. Like I remember we ended up transferring 2 embryos, which is what we wanted to do. And then I remember there was a special glue that the doctor used.
Embryo glue.
Embryo glue. That was another bonus thing that was offered. And then another thing that was offered was
assisted hatching.
The hatching, yes. There's so many extra things. So I think if you're gonna compare apples to apples in the US, what LIV Fertility is offering is closer to $30,000 plus equivalent in the US for what we paid. If you include all of our stay and our food and our flights, about $12,000 for. So to me, it was like night and day difference. I mean, it was worth every single penny and saved us a lot of money ultimately.
Thank you for sharing this information. You know that for people in the States and in Canada and any other place in the world, they think that Mexico is a dangerous place, or Mexico it is not safe for traveling. And sharing your experience might help other people who is thinking about coming to Mexico to do any other kind of treatments.
Yes, and honestly, that's what I was going to say earlier, is I think that Mexico gets a really bad rap in the US. And I think the way that I think about it is, even in the US, if you go to the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, you're going to run into trouble. And I think any country is like that. And so I think you just have to be smart about it and you have to be calculated, but there's no reason to be afraid, especially in a city like Puerto Vallarta, where there is a huge tourism. It's a big tourism spot. It's a very safe spot. I mean, yeah, we felt totally comfortable during our time there. I mean, whether I was by myself or with my husband, I felt very safe. I had no problems. It really was, from the minute that I landed, there were people that could help me. People were friendly. I really had no issues whatsoever. So I think if fear is a reason that's holding you back from pursuing treatment at Liv, it shouldn't be. Let me put your fears to rest, because we honeymooned there over 7 years ago, and I feel the same as I did there 7 years ago as to now. That's why I say it's a beautiful country. It is worth it, and you will be totally fine. You will be totally fine. Just be smart, just like you would anywhere, and you're going to be taken care of. You don't have to worry.
Okay. Yes, totally agree. And people should know that locals, we see that many Canadians, many Americans are coming here to get retired. That they buy their condos, they buy houses just in front of the beach, and they decided to get retired in Mexico. Okay, so let's focus on your treatment at LIV Fertility Center. What kind of treatments did you have here with us?
So we did IVF with my own eggs and my husband's sperm. That's correct.
Okay, and how was your experience at LIV?
The biggest thing I was nervous about was if they would speak good enough English for me to be able to understand. So one of the reasons we went with Liv Fertility was because on your website, you say that your techs and your nurses are fluent in both Spanish and English. And while my husband is fluent in Spanish, he is not fluent in the medical side of Spanish, though he's comfortable with that. And I know I studied Spanish, so I can understand a lot, but the medical side, no. So I was a little nervous as to how proficient the English would be, but I was very pleased to find out that everyone was plenty proficient enough for us to understand each other. So that was something that I was nervous about, that I was very pleased with. Another thing that I really loved was how friendly all the staff were. I remember every day that I walk in, because, you know, when you're going through fertility treatment, it's stressful, it's emotional, there's a lot of hormones, right? So you're kind of all over the place, but the staff was very sweet. I could tell that they genuinely cared about me. Because I would go so frequently, they started recognizing me because I had the red hair, you know, so I would walk in and they would say, Amber, hello, you know, and that was very sweet, because it is such a personal and intimate thing to try to conceive children through fertility treatment. And so I wanted to feel trust with the staff, and I was very happy to experience a lot of trust and a lot of good communication between us.
I am very glad that you have felt this way, because that is our goal. Our patients are not just numbers, and it is very funny because we remember all of our patients, and we are in the meetings and we remember Amber, we remember Stephanie, we remember Mary. They have become a family for us. So I'm very glad that you have felt this way. This is our goal.
And if I can just say, I felt that from you, because like I said, I've gotten treatment in the US and it felt very different. I mean, even in the US, and we're talking about a lot more money that we're spending here. But here at the clinics that we went to in the US, we felt like a number on a page. Like when we had our miscarriage, I'll never forget. The doctor was so matter of fact and quick about it. She's like, oh, this baby has no heartbeat. This baby's going to be a miscarriage. And it was a moment in my life I will never forget, the devastation and emotion that I felt. But I felt like the doctor treated it like just another day in my book, which probably to her that it was. But what I felt from Liv was not that. I felt like you all were invested in my journey. And I love your slogan, live the journey, embrace the destination, because sometimes things don't go the way that we hoped, right? I mean, sometimes, like I said, I got 6 eggs and then only 3 were mature enough to fertilize. That was an emotional moment for me. But I'm very thankful because the doctor that I spoke to was very hopeful for me and told me not to lose heart, because, you know, it's an emotional journey. And I'm very thankful because not all clinics are like that. And Liv, I think, is very special for that reason.
Let's talk about the highlights on your journey. How did you feel when you received the news that you were pregnant?
Oh, I could get emotional talking about it. I was relieved and excited, but I was nervous because we had been through miscarriage once before.
Okay, and what happened next?
So obviously, after you get a positive pregnancy test, the next big step is the HCG levels. So that's what I was the most excited. I didn't let myself get too excited until we did the level check, and we wanted to make sure things were going in a good direction. So I remember I had my HCG levels checked, and I remember that the levels were like, I think on the initial one, it was like 7,000. It was something very high. And that's when I knew there was a good likelihood that maybe we had conceived both embryos, you know? So I was very excited. And then we had the follow up, and it was like, I think it was like 20,000. It was very high. And so we were like, yay, maybe twins. So we sent the news to Liv, and then we set up our first ultrasound appointment here in the US.
What were your concerns and expectations during the pregnancy?
We set up our first appointment, which is called a confirmation of pregnancy here in the US. And so we went in for that first appointment, and we were excited but nervous because we wanted to make sure the babies had heartbeat. And so we told our doctor, oh yeah, we did IVF, we did it in Mexico. She said, oh, that has a very high success rate. I'm sure you do have twins. How special is that? And then she made a joke. She said, unless you have triplets, which sometimes happens. And we said, ha ha ha, no way, that would never happen to us. And then we did the ultrasound, and she counted 1, 2, 3 babies. And we could not believe it. So one of our embryos had split into a set of identical twins, and that's how we got 3. So both embryos that we transferred were successful, and then one split. And so after she said, oh, you have 3 babies, we were like, oh my gosh. Because when we had talked to Liv, we had asked them, has anybody ever had triplets at your clinic? And they said, yes, but it's very rare. They said one time it had happened when someone transferred all 3 embryos and they got pregnant with triplets. And then another one was our situation where they transferred 2 and then 1 split. And so there were 3. And so we were one of the lucky ones that had 3. And so we were very excited, but we were very nervous because a multiples pregnancy is more high risk. And so it was very scary, but they referred us to a specialist, and we started going to MFM here in the US, and we continued our medications because we talked with our doctor at Liv through email, and she had told us, you know, to continue our medications, which we did. And so it was definitely a challenging pregnancy. I was very sick, very, very, very sick. But I made it through, and I carried the triplets 32 weeks and 6 days. And that's how long I carried them, which is very good for triplets. And I delivered 3 healthy babies, and I'm very thankful for those babies.
Okay, and now is the question, how does she do it?
That's the question that everybody wants to ask. And I would say, first of all, if you want to check out my Instagram, raising.rodriguez, that's where I have all the inside scoop on the details of how I do things. But I would say the biggest thing is, like I said earlier, Liv, your slogan, I really like. Live the journey, embrace the destination. I never thought I would be a triplet mom. When I got married 7 years ago, I never imagined I would have multiples. But after you go through infertility, the beautiful thing about infertility is however you're able to have children, whether through your own children or egg donation or embryo donation or adoption, infertility helps you be grateful because you know that you would rather have children than be without children. And so I'm very thankful. So my ultimate destination was triplets, but I had to embrace that, right? Because that was part of my story. And now hopefully I can help others to also embrace their destination. Things are crazy around here. My triplets are now 1 year old. They're not walking yet, but they're crawling everywhere and eating everything. And as you heard earlier, it's very loud around here, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And Liv will always hold a very special place in my heart because as I like to say, you know, the triplets were made in Mexico, right? Hecho en Mexico. And I'm very thankful for that. And we look forward one day to coming back and visiting and bringing our triplets in so that everyone can see them, because the Liv family is a part of our story. And I really love sharing about Liv Clinic, and I share about it often on my page because I want people to know that there is hope for them. And Liv is a great place for hope. And they're also very supportive and embracing wherever the destination takes you. So I am so, so thankful for your clinic and so thankful for the way that you were able to be a part of our family story.
All right, thank you for sharing this inspiring story. And now I have to ask, how was that moment? The moment when you finally met your triplets?
That moment that I met my triplets for the first time will be ingrained into my soul forever. Waiting all of those years, crying all those tears, spending the money, all of that just came to a conclusion right there when I remember I held my daughter Lucia for the first time after I gave birth, and the birth was very stressful. I had preeclampsia right at the end of my pregnancy, so they were delivered via emergency C-section, and it was a lot, but holding her for the first time, it all felt worth it. Everything that I had experienced and everything that I had gone through to be in that moment, it was the greatest moment of my life. And I only wish I had gotten to hold them all at the same time. I had to go to each room because they were in the NICU, but I really would not trade it for anything. It was the most incredible and magical moment, and I just feel so thankful that I got to and relieved. I felt so relieved that I finally got to hold them.
How is to be a mom of triplets? How do you do it?
It's very busy and it's very loud. There's always somebody crying, needing my attention. I will say that I have the triplets on a very strict schedule. So they nap at the same time, they eat at the same time, they sleep at the same time. And that has been very helpful for our family. And so, that makes our schedule predictable for them. So they really like that. They know, when they're going to eat and when they're going to sleep. And then when they nap, I kind of get like a little break. So I would say probably honestly, the beginning, the newborn stage of multiples is the hardest stage. It is very challenging at the beginning. But as they grow, it does get easier. And then it's amazing because when you have multiples, you have built-in best friends. So as busy as it is, the babies always have someone to play with. There's always someone to interact with or to steal toys from. And it's a ton of fun.
I know that they are 1 year old now. I want to know what their personalities are.
So Rafael is my little clown. He is so silly and always getting everybody's attention and smiling and laughing, and he's very silly. Lucia is very sweet. She likes hugs the most and always wants to cuddle with me and be close to me. And then Camila is very independent. She likes to watch what's going on, but she's the most content to be by herself. She likes to play by herself and doesn't necessarily want to be interrupted by her siblings all the time.
How do you feel about your life at this point? Do you have plans for the future?
I am so thankful. As I said earlier, infertility has painted my journey with a lot of joy. And so as wild and crazy as our life is, I'm very thankful for what it is right now. It's very busy. But in the future, we're not sure if we want to have more children yet, which people probably think I'm crazy that I'm considering having more children. But I think it's hard when you go for infertility, you long to be pregnant and long to experience that. And so for me, it's a little hard for me to believe that it's already all over. I'm not sure. And so one of the things about our family that's special is that we have one embryo left. So we think a lot and pray a lot about what we want to do. We're not ready to decide yet. But we're very grateful for Liv because that embryo can stay frozen and live if and when we're ready to use it. So not sure yet what the future holds. We're going to wait until the triplets are a little older, but we are very happy with our very full life right now.
Okay, Amber, now we are almost finishing. And we want to thank you about sharing this amazing story. And I wouldn't like to let you go before you telling us what advices you have for patients struggling with infertility?
Yeah, I would say take a deep breath. It won't always feel this way. I think when you feel infertility, sometimes to me felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. It was just kind of this ongoing nightmare that I felt trapped in. And in my mind, sometimes that would trap me mentally and make me feel like I was always going to feel this way. But I think now for me being on the other side of it, and I remember close friends in my life giving me hope the same, that it won't always feel this way. And then the other thing is to try, I think, everything you can, even if you don't feel like trying. One of the things I'm the most grateful for in my husband is before we actually did IVF at LIV Fertility, I was ready to give up our biological child journey after our miscarriage. It was so taxing and heartbreaking for me emotionally to experience child loss that I didn't want to experience that again. And so when we considered getting IVF treatment, initially I told my husband, I don't want to do that because I don't want to go through that. And I'm very grateful for him because even though I was very emotional, we talked about it a lot. His encouragement to me was, Amber, when you're 40 years old, or, imagine how old you are 10 years from now. If you're going to look back at the time that we did fertility clinic, I was 33. So he said, imagine your 43-year-old self talking to your 33-year-old self. Would your 43-year-old self tell yourself, I wish I would have tried? Or would you regret not trying? And that was a very helpful thing for me because I realized that if in 10 years I didn't give it every try, I would feel regret. And so even if, sorry, my children, even if it didn't work, I felt like I would feel free that we did everything we could before we considered other options outside of fertility treatment. And so for that, I have a lot of peace. And I would tell others to keep trying, even though it's hard and the hormones and the money. When you meet that child, all of it feels worth it. You will not regret any sacrifice, financially, time, or otherwise, to make that child come into your life. It is worth everything, everything. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you for sharing your story. This is a story of hope, and this is a story also of success. Thank you also to Esteban, who encouraged you to try one more time. And we really think that this story inspires other couples to do it and to not give up.
It's been a joy to be with you today.
To our listeners, thank you for joining to this emotional roller coaster. We hope you found inspiration in Amber's story. If you have a story that you would like to share with us, you can reach to us. Stay tuned for more episodes. This is Dr. Medina, and see you next time in Living the Journey, the podcast.